Hello there. It's a weekday morning. Um, out here, enjoying life. Had a very good breakfast today. Well, basically, my breakfast was a leftover dinner. I cooked myself yesterday. I did a Thai red curry, so I had a leftover dinner. And yeah, basically, I thought I'd continue with the content. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about a concept called the hamster wheel. A lot of the concepts that I talk about are quite common. I have my own framing for it. I have my own wording for it. The reason is because I live alone, and I have time to reflect. I have time to journal, and I have time to think of ideas. And I love thinking about different ideas. And a lot of my ideas are to do with life management and how I'm managing life as a solo survivalist in the UK, making ends meet, and just enjoying life, and more importantly, buying back time, buying back much needed time that I couldn't really have growing up because it was always very busy in the system. Today's concept, and you'll probably understand when I start talking about it, is the concept called hamster wheel. What is the hamster wheel? So, the hamster wheel is something we all end up falling into, whether we like it or not, at some point of our life. And many of us who live off the grid and who've escaped the so-called hamster wheel, or trying their best to, have lived in the hamster wheel for a long time, for a considerable amount of time. Some of you guys have started making the move to off-grid living into simpler living in your 60s, in your 50s, in your 40s. In my case, it was my 20s when I realised this ain't worth it. This struggle isn't worth it. The hamster wheel effectively means it is a place where you're constantly running, but you're chasing your tail in life, and you're not achieving anything. You're not feeling like you're achieving anything, and you're not feeling like you're giving enough time to yourself and to your core mission. So you are working to pay off bills, to pay debt, or mainly important, to pay bills to maintain a certain living standard, but you feel like every month you're back to square one again. So you're in a hamster wheel because it's going back. You're running, and then you're coming back to the same position again, and you don't feel like your life's actually getting any better. So this is what I call the hamster wheel, right? I just kind of come up with the term because it was something I thought about yesterday, and I haven't really mentioned it. I think I might have mentioned it a few videos briefly, but I haven't really thought it through. And I was just writing some notes trying to explain it and how people come about it, how people get into the hamster wheel in the first place. The first way people get into hamster wheel, I think everyone does, is if you get schooled. So if you are schooled in an education system, in a public education system, whether or not it's public school, private school, grammar school in the UK, you automatically enroll yourself into a wheel where you think it's going to get better, and you're not, because you wake up every day doing the same lessons every day. And are you learning anything, or are you just feeling like you're regurgitating and reading and memorizing, or are you actually learning about life? Because life is far bigger than the books. Books are great. They help to learn and give you some foundation of understanding the world, but they're not enough to learn about life. Life is what you make of it, but equally life is a lot more about what are you getting beyond the book. Are you able to have a personality that can deliver? Are you able to have a personality that can sell, that can market, that can offer value, that can persuade people, that can influence? These are things that you're not necessarily picked up on school, or are seen as extracurricular activities or extra stuff, but they're not the core. Whereas in fact, there should be anything but the core, because a lot of people have very good jobs, have very good roles, are very satisfied in life because of certain traits in their personality that have allowed them to do so. So, that's what we like to talk about. So now there's various ways people enter an hamster wheel. The first way is indoctrinate yourself into a public education system. And you go into it and you learn these lessons, and everyone's learning the same thing. So you end up realising you come out of this education system and you haven't really picked up on a lot of skills, bar the basics of reading, writing, and numeracy, and learning to think. But a lot of these skills you'd have picked up either way. I get maths and English and stuff like that. Okay, you need a few years to pick that up, but But a lot of, you pursue an education system that is just, it isn't giving you all the real life skills you need to survive. And you're still left coming out of it a dependent. You're still left depending on people. So have you really become an adult if you're still depending on people other than, the people who you deliver value to, in order to survive? And that's what I call the hamster wheel. So now we've talked about the hamster wheel, this concept, I'm now going to be moving on to the concept of how to get out of the hamster wheel. Because obviously the school is one way. We often keep going for the hamster wheel because we realise and we need to follow something of a routine. So we'll go from a school to a 9 to 5 because it's the most traditional path. And it's fair enough, it's a very good path as well for some, not for all, but for some. But not everyone is fit for that system. And my aim is to try and channel through that energy and channel through that conversation to people who don't feel like the 9 to 5 or a traditional working job is fit for them. For loads of people, it's the right thing to do. For me, it wasn't. And I'm sure there's other people who are doing it for the sake of it and don't really want to do it deep down. So we talk about that. So that's another way, and that's when you keep running into hamster wheel. And basically you're saving up for something called retirement, and then you're actually thinking that you're going to enjoy life properly when you're 70, 80 on. The retirement age in the UK is only going to increase. You need to be having a good work-life balance at an earlier age and enjoying yourself at an earlier age, because this retirement age that you keep thinking that you need to save up for is going to take ages to get there. And all you're going to remember is you're going to remember a few sparse holidays, and the majority of your days are going to go in like a train that blends the start to an end. Start to an end is blended because you're not enjoying your life. You're not working for what you want to work on. You're not really enjoying what you want to be doing because you're paying bills and because you're in an hamster wheel. So now we've talked about the hamster wheel, right? So the annoying thing about this is I'm giving the information, I'll give the guidance for people that want to learn. But there's a lot of people who I give the guidance to and they don't want to learn because they don't want to. They're still in the fixed mindset. And so this is why I'm trying to reach out to people who are not in this fixed mindset, right? I'm literally telling you how you can get out of this. It's not easy, but there are ways to get out of it, right? So number one is it depends on how early you are. So I was very conscious of the fact that I didn't want to go right into this hamster wheel because there's various degrees of how much you're spinning within it and how locked in you are. So number one is you've got to think of life as a business, right? You've got to think of life as a business. You've got to think of life as a profit-making machine, where you can use the profit to reinvest in enjoyment, in pleasure, and growth. Okay, so stop thinking of life as, okay, let's go 9 to 5, let's pay a bill, let's do this. Let's look at it as, how am I going to win this month? What are my quick wins going to make? Treat your life like a business, just the way you put an effort into your, into all these businesses. Treat your life as a business, and sometimes it's going to be tough, but treat it as, okay, how am I going to win? How am I going to create value? Because the best way to make money is to create value for people and actually care about the people you help. If you don't care about people you help, if you don't feel like you're creating value, whether you're creating new things or you're maintaining something, which is itself is a money-making thing, if you can maintain something and repair something, as I've done in previous roles, you are not going to be making money. So number one is think of your life as a business. And when you think of your life as a business, you're forced to think of profit. You're forced to think of, okay, if I was a business, if I was going in insolvency, what would the courts tell me? What would they tell me to remove? Okay. So you thought about that. That's one way. So let's just always think of your life as a way, where you've got to make profit. So that's one thing. Okay. So but then you ask me, okay, how am I going to make profit? I'm not struggling. I don't understand how I'm going to make profit. Okay. So these are the three things you've got to look at, right? So firstly, there's things you can control, things you can't control. I've mentioned about the quadrant in an earlier video. I'll explain about, what you can control, what you can't control. You've got to understand that there are some things that are not in your control. Profit comes from timing and good relationships and seizing the right opportunities. So that's something you cannot always control, but you can put the 110% effort to make sure that you're making those opportunities work for you. All right. So that's one thing. So the first thing is, okay, income is obviously your main thing. How are you making your income? So when I say profit, it's important to look at two dimensions. It's income and it's cost. Right, so you can be on a high income, but if your costs are creeping up and if you've got a lot of costs, you could be on 60, 70 grand, for example, 100 grand. I don't know what money people are on nowadays. you know, at 20, 30 or 40. But if you've got a lot of costs and you're creeping, you feel like you're now actually trapped, because although you're having the income, you're not able, you have to maintain a certain level of cost to fulfill your lifestyle. So you get into something called lifestyle creep, which is why I emphasize profit, not income. Whereas you can be on 2-3k income a month and you can have, I don't know, £500 costs or something like that, or maybe not £500. It's not a realistic cost. I'll be honest with you, it's not realistic, but maybe 800 £1,000 for monthly cost, depending on how you configure your life, and you'll end up making far more profit without having to maintain a high income job. So that's one thing. That's why I always emphasize profit. But how can you make profit? So obviously the one is the most obvious thing, high income job. It's what 99% of people think about when it comes to profit, is high income job. The second thing you can think about is cost and configuration. So 99% of people who live in life in the UK are not thinking outside the box, because they're actually effectively doing either one or two things. They're paying a mortgage, they're paying a rent, or one of three things. They're paying a mortgage, they're paying a rent, or they're living with family. There's the three boxes that all three of you, that any of you are probably near guaranteed to be doing. So that is obviously your configuration, and that's going to limit your profit depending on the kind of costs that you're incurring. So that's why it's so important, and that's why you're going to end up in the same hamster wheel, because you're going to end up trying to make these, you know, trying to basically maintain that configuration, and you're looking at your costs. So how can you get out of profit? So we've talked about number one solution is obviously increase your income, which is the most obvious thing. Number two is take a risk. So what of those configurations can you flip? So in that configuration, you've obviously got your income, which is your high-paying job, or your job, or well-paying, or whatever paying job you've got, and you've got your costs. Your cost is whatever you're paying for. But what risks can you take? Because anything to change a major configuration is a risk. For me, in my case, my risk was just becoming homeless, in the sense that I want to build my own house, I want to build my own cabin. I'd rather do that than pay for something for a standard land. It's not worth it in the UK. The land is oversaturated, the market's oversaturated, and hardly anyone's able to live on their own at 24, because they can't afford it. You know, most people can't afford it. They can't live on their own at 24. Most people can't afford it because they're not taking certain risks. So I'm a big propagator of obviously the van life, depending if you can do it right. But obviously car camping is getting quite big now. So take the risk, because if you don't take the risk, you'll never know. What's the worst that's going to happen? You know, what's the worst that can happen? What, you get another job, you get a heated tent. If you're 24, you've got no responsibilities, you've got a street life like a business, you've got to be brutal about it. Because if you want to survive, you've got to be brutal. All right? It's going to be tough. It's not even easy for me sometimes. I mean, I'm in a good period right now in life where I'm doing all right, touch wood. There's not much wood in a car, touch teddy bear. But that is, you know, what I would say is a big thing. So yeah, that is something what I'm going to call risk. So that's one way of making more profit, is risk. So number three is network. Now, there's this thing about 9 to 5, and you can build a network for 9 to 5. Yes, but it's a very long haul thing, and you're likely to network yourself into new jobs rather than actually new contracts and things that are actually exciting and new deals. So when I say network, really just go out there and just talk to businesses. You know, I did it for music. I was a music manager a little bit for an artist, and that's all I did. I just called up restaurants, ring. Do you want to book him in? Do you want to book him in? I got some right old flack for it, but after 100 calls, I made a bit of money from that, and it's not stable, I know, but it teaches you a valuable lesson about, you know, offering value, timing, and being confident and being resilient. And these are things that are gonna, if you can network, you can find that you'll have a market that's a lot more responsive to you, and you're able to make profit other than a 9 to 5. So learn to sell. And this is something I'm working on as well. I'm not perfect, and everything I'm teaching, I'm learning, and we'll be journaling it, because I'm hoping that in 5-10 years time, I can give you guys even more advice, because I'm still young, I'm still learning, and I want to be able to journal a lot of the things I'm doing so that I can leave a legacy behind. That's one thing I'm quite motivated to leave a legacy when I go, because I won't be here forever, but I want to leave a legacy like everyone does in terms of their experiences of life. And so these are the things I'm just learning along the way. So obviously I've talked about profit, I've talked about risk, and I've talked about network. These are three things that can get you out of the hamster wheel. And you've really got to think through these lines. It's no good just watching this video and not applying it, and watching what I'm talking about and not applying it, or just saying I can't be asked for this shit. or because then don't watch it. Because all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you advice. I'm trying to give people advice who want to take it to get out, and I think that's one of the things I'm going to try and help people with, because I think there's a lot of, and I especially talk to young men out there who are lost in the system and they feel like they're not achieving anything. They haven't got the right relationships they want to be in, they haven't got the right friendships around them, they don't have the right co-workers around them. There's a lot of things. It's not always going to be perfect, but you need to have an end game. You need to have an end game, and sometimes those end games are not always just a standard job, because you're going to still be in the hamster wheel. And I always think the biggest thing in life that you want to get out of is a hamster wheel, because it means you can, on a weekday morning, you can wake up and you're still working hard. I still work hard, but it's just that you work your, you can be more responsive to the economy, to the market, and you can just enjoy it and self-reflect and journal and talk about life. So this is obviously the main, the main thing that I want to explain. So I've talked about the hamster wheel, I've talked about time, risk, network. Now, there's going to be a fair bunch of you who are going to be in, and let's not beat around the bush, who are going to be in debt, right? Now, debt is, I'll touch wood, I haven't incurred this kind of situation before, but what would I do? So, first of all, understand that 99% of the time, debt, unless with one exception being if you've been born into a family where you are having to be a caretaker and stuff like that, okay, there's big caveats here. But I think 99% of the time, if you're in debt, I'm going to be brutally honest about it, it's just going to make you, it might make you tear up, it might make you, feel upset. But 99%, if you're in debt, it is your fault. I know this is sounding bad, and I would never say it to anyone, but you're watching my video right now, and you've watched it all the way through, which means that you're quite interested in what I'm talking about. 99% of why you're in debt is because it's your fault. Somewhere along the line, you fucked up. All right, whether it be a relationship that you got carried away with, whether it be going into credit and financing too early and not managing your expenses well enough, and 99% in life, you made a decision and you decided to borrow a loan or take a loan for it, and that is why you're in debt. So you've got to first of all take accountability, and 99% in people in debt, unfortunately, don't want to take the accountability for the actions. I know if I was in debt, I would live very brutally. I would live like a pauper, and I wouldn't even have this van. I'd be living off a car or something. I'd be doing homeless. I'd be doing everything to get out of being in debt. And if that means I'm struggling, I'd rather struggle and live within my own means than have a lifestyle which looks fancy on the outside, but the cash flow is just not adding up. So I'm very brutal about this, and I may face the karma for it by saying it, but I'm just trying to be honest. All right. So if you come through this episode, so what would I do if I was in a hamster wheel? That is the worst part, because you're now in the hamster wheel and you can't feel like you're getting out. You're trapped in, you're locked in, and you're the furthest spinning, you're the fastest spinning, you're well within it. Everyone else is able to jump off it, but you ain't. So how would I go about this? Well, first of all, if we had a brutal answer, I'd scrap every luxury expense, everything. I'd scrap it all. I'd scrap everything, and I would live in a heated tent. That's what I would do. I know that doesn't sound right, but we're in the UK, lads. We're not in, it's not big money here. If you're young, you're not going to get, no matter what the institutions and told you about benefits and shit, don't do that, because it's not, as a young man, you're at the bottom of the social welfare queue anyway. You're not a family with kids, and you're not an immigrant, you're not an asylum seeker. So government ain't going to give you shit. As a young lad, if you've been in the education system and you're not, if you're not an asylum seeker, if you're not a family with kids, if you're not disabled, you're just not going to get benefits. And to forget that, you've got to be a little bit of a glamper, a little bit of a wild camper, and you've got to be stealthy about it. You've got to have a configuration about you where you can, just do a basic job. That's what I'd do. Because what will that do? It will be very depressing, but you will be able to pay off debts gradually, but you will have to take a massive hit on your lifestyle. And 99% of people, I guarantee you watching this, do not want to do it. And this is what separates the people who will get out of the hamster wheel, or who will do the very best to go out and take time out of the hamster wheel, and who won't. And this is about you. This is about how much time do you want in your life to enjoy yourself? How are you going to be making that configuration work? Okay, so I know a lot of the things that I've said people don't want to hear about, and I would not dare say it to people's face if because unsolicited advice is the worst form of advice, I always think. But if you want the true advice, I'm gonna try and do some graphics on it. I'm gonna try and do some resources on it. Yeah, if you want to ask me any questions about it, I'm trying to think. This is also a little more, I just want to gain conversation and buzz around what I'm talking about. And it's very annoying because I give these ideas and I don't, if everyone does what I do, I don't know if it would be the best thing, because it is too good sometimes. But at the same time, I do feel like it's a duty to help young men, because I don't want other young lads going through what I went through growing up. Because not growing up, but being in my early 20s, because it was tough. I moved out at 21. I didn't move out for uni, I moved out at 21. And it was tough, you know. It's not an easy lifestyle. I was out working, waking up 5, 6 a.m, managing drivers who are grumpy old sods. You know, being around this. And I'm this young entrepreneurial guy. I love ideas, I love creating stuff, I love supporting, you know, ambitious individuals with their storytelling and all that. Yeah, so I just want young men to understand that. And I know it's difficult because we're living in the internet age now, where there's so many hypermasculine figures of like 30, 34-year-olds. They might not even be very relatable because they're all seem to be multi-millionaires. And I tell you right now, I'm not in that stage at all. I'm just trying to journal what I've learned. And if I can help one single individual who is in college, just about to graduate, young man, who wants to win at life, because the UK it's a great country, but it's not, you know. I'll sort out a separate video about entrepreneurism in the UK and business in the UK and the modern age, and what we're going through at the moment as young men in the UK, or sole survivors, so living on your own and you know, not having to depend on anyone. But it is tough out here, lads. It's tough out here, but it's also beautiful. There is a beauty in the struggle, and that's just what I want to talk about. So I'm going to now edit this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed the concept of the hamster wheel. I thought I'd have to do this video because I had a lot of ideas to talk about. And I wrote a few notes this time, so it's a bit of a ramble, but there's some points in here which I'm gonna talk about. And I just hope you enjoy the video. And if it's use to you, if it ain't, you know, fair enough. You haven't absorbed. I can only do what I can do. I can only share my advice now that I'm, you know, not bound by not bound by anything. I'm just myself, and enjoying life. And a weekday morning, get your time back, guys. Get your time back. Be responsive to the new market. The new age is what you offer in value. You know, there's so many new things happening right now. It's exciting. It's not always easy, but it's exciting stuff. You know, weekday morning, weekday lunchtime. The weekday can be a new weekend. You know, so it's a quieter as well. It's nice and peaceful that way.